Hi, this is Bonnie with TLC Inspirations, and today I'm going to be showing you how I added some of my vintage embroidery to my crazy quilt. Um, these are old pieces of embroidery linens that my mom embroidered years ago. She is now 87, so they've been around for a while. Unfortunately, they are kind of worn and stained. They have holes. And some of the stitching is coming out. So I want to salvage what I can, and so I thought I would uh, cut the designs from the vintage linens and work them into my crazy quilt. You can also trim off the edgings that are crocheted or if the lace has been sewn on. This is larger designs. You could easily use these in a large crazy or patchwork quilt and cut the squares pretty much full size and work them in. But in this case, we're doing a crazy quilt. So I'm going to put this piece aside and save it for a different project, but you can see how that would work into a patchwork quilt really nicely. And they're really pretty flowers, and it's got some nice lace on it too. So for this project, I'm going to go back to the other piece, and I'm going to select the butterfly design and cut around it. Now you're not going to be able to salvage all the stitches, and you're going to end up cutting through, some of the little things around your embroidery design, or maybe have to cut it off short, but you can figure out the best way to fit it into your crazy quilt. Sometimes you can cut out a little design individually, and sometimes you can group them up into more than one. You're going to start by having a piece of muslin that is cut according to your square size. I've cut mine at 8 so that I end up with a 7-inch square. And so I have my butterfly cut out of my vintage linen. I've got a little piece of lace here and another little flower that my mom embroidered. I've gathered up some fabric scraps that I may want to use on my square. The whole idea, if you've watched my previous videos on crazy quilting, is to just kind of figure out how you want things to lay out and then start adding your pieces as you go. Make sure that you allow enough fabric around your vintage design in case you do have to turn any of the edges under if the design lands on top of another fabric. And if you've watched my previous videos, I've showed before how to do the crazy quilting, laying your fabric on top of your design with straight edged kind of together and then flipping it outward. And if you land on another fabric, you're going to have to turn the edge under so that you have a nice finished edge. But I'm starting with my butterfly in the center, and I've kind of just laid some fabrics out how I think I want it to go. So I'm starting with my butterfly that I've cut out, and you've noticed it's kind of got curved edges because that was the only way I could capture it. So I'm going to start by just laying some fabrics around the edge and stitching them down the best I can. You can't line up perfect straight edges when you've got a straight edge and a curve, so you just kind of start placing them all around the edge and working outward. And also in my videos, this is how you hand piece, stitch your pieces together by hand, and then flip them over. And be sure to press your pieces as you go. That's very important. You want to make sure they're laying nice and flat. Also, if you when you flip your piece up, sometimes you will have extra bulk underneath, and you can just trim that off. It's just to get rid of the bulk because you don't really want that underneath there. Be sure you don't trim your muslin instead. You just want to trim the fabric scrap. Okay, so now I'm working on another piece, and we'll have another little trimming to do here. And as you can see, I ironed my edge under so that when I flip it over, I've got a nice clean edge that comes over my previous fabric. And I've got a piece of my lace, and you can put the lace either on top or kind of sandwich it between the seam. Whatever you prefer, it works both ways. Now, when you have your folded edge that lands over another fabric, you're going to want to take your needle and thread and just do a hem stitch to make it nice and neat and tidy. Any of these seams, when you're done, if you do know how to embroider, you can do any of your decorative embroidery stitches either by hand or by machine along the stitches, or along the seams, excuse me. Anyway, so just if you're hand piecing, we just want to make sure we stitch all the way around these pressed edges so they lay nice and flat. And then again, you're going to want to press. Okay, now as far as this little crocheted trim that I cut off the vintage piece, I sandwiched it in the seam, but it's loose and floppy, so later on we're gonna stitch that down. This is another piece I did the same way, so I plan on embroidering along this edge with maybe a chain stitch or something, but I'll baste it first with a regular needle and thread along the edge and on each end. Okay, so we just keep on going with our fabrics here and working our way around our vintage piece. And you can put little pieces of lace or trim or ribbon or other vintage designs anywhere you want in your crazy quilt. So now, like I said, I'm going to stitch down the edge of this piece of trim. Again, I'm just going to take tiny little stitches all along the bottom so it'll lay nice and flat. I'm using a regular needle and thread for this to work my way all the way across. And then again, I will go to my iron and press it all nice and flat. And just keep working your way around, kind of within the lace or the crochet trim or ribbon or whatever it is that you're working with. You want all pieces to lay nice and flat. You can also do this by machine. Okay, I'll do the same thing on this one. Stitch it down. So we're making progress. There's another piece that's all sewn and flattened. Okay, I got my butterflies and my lace trim, my flowers, a nice little memory of my mom. Now, if you've watched my previous videos on crazy quilting, you know that your pieces will end up going over and past the edge of your foundation square. And you can trim all that up once you get all your pieces on. And then you can trim it up to match your foundation square. Okay, and again, now this piece here has 3 folded edges, so I need to hand stitch, a blind hem stitch all along this piece. Sometimes you'll have little cubby holes that you need to, fill in, and hopefully you can work them either over or under. And you'll even find times where you may have to undo a couple stitches of a previous piece in order to get everything to fit together nicely. So again, you'll be able to trim all this excess off. Once you get your square completely covered and everything pressed and stitched down, still got some stitching to do over here before we're completely done. And then you can further enhance your quilt if you know how to embroider, or if you want to use a machine to do embroidery. As you can see right here, I did some chain stitch, and I did some herringbone stitch. I did some lazy daisy stitches up here, and here I did some French knots, and right here I did some stem stitches, just outlined a design within the fabric. So you can do a lot of things, but I really like that I can hang on to these treasures of my mom's. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.